Travis Wayne Goodsell. Because of the things that I know, I am trying to get through to Mormons to save your lives. I know of a threat to your life, and I want to save you. Unfortunately, there are Mormons, including the Mormon YouTube employee down in Utah County, who don't want me to try to save your life. They are also part of this enemy that wants you murdered. They want you raped. Just as every single day in the news, there is a Mormon guilty of rape, guilty of murder. Last night was no different. I am being cyber-terrorized, just like I normally get right before conference. Because in a coming day, I have learned that there is a threat to your life. And there are people who are shutting me up so that you, your neighbors, your loved ones, family, friends, will be murdered. In the 1980s, Mark Hoffman forged the Salamander letter, deceived the living prophets of Jesus, and it made the news, even the Deseret News, with the infamous picture of him showing a document to the leaders of the church, the First Presidency, and a couple of others of the apostles. They let Mormons believe that they had found something through Mark Hoffman. And then we came to find out that Mark Hoffman had forged documents to deceive the leaders of the church. And it worked. They got deceived. The forgery of the Salamander letter said that it was by Martin Harris. Dallin H. Oaks is a second great nephew of Martin Harris. And he was around and knew about it. And Mark Hoffman fooled the leaders of the church into believing that Martin Harris had a document that was found talking about the succession of the church belonging to Joseph Smith III, because the Salamander said so. Then, in 1993, for September, the September 6th, one person had found that Joseph Smith had rocks in a hat, and that the church had the rock in his possession. they had in the archives the SEER stone. Now this one was a polished one, all nice and shiny, rather than the two that became known to South Park. And we know this because of a document by Martin Harris. Again, a journal entry of Martin Harris saying that Joseph Smith used a rock and a hat that he had found in the well at his farm. The September 6th person tried to harmonize Joseph Smith obtaining a rock and a hat with what the church had been telling us to that time, that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God. And tried to explain why there was also the Urim and Thummim given to Joseph Smith by the angel Moroni, as we were told his name was. Nevertheless, the person was still excommunicated and fired. And thus, September 6th. Martin Harris is the one who told us that Joseph Smith used a rock and a hat trick. Eventually, somebody would find out that Joseph Smith was arrested. I think it's Bainbridge, New York, where a receipt was found in the court ledger that Joseph Smith had been charged with a misdemeanor of glass looking, and the cost was a few dollars. Thus establishing that Joseph Smith had, prior to 22nd of September 1827, the Urim and Thummim, that he had this rock and a hat. This shattered the church. It was back in the 60s, late 60s, when the Metropolitan Museum of Art had found papyri that the one guy recognized it connected to the Book of Abraham of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so deals were made to hand over the papyri to the church. Except that scholars were able to examine the papyri now, and Egyptology, only knowing the learning of the Greek's language of the Egyptians because of the decipherment of Egyptian being from the Rosetta Stone, Greek and Roman, or Greek and Egyptian. That was as far as their knowledge of Egyptian goes. I don't know if any of you have ever checked for yourself the individual hieroglyphs found on each of the three, and check them online with Egyptian Gardner's sign list. Gardner's Egyptian sign list. some missing signs that Gardner does not give us. And if you were to know about others, like Budge, who have sign lists as well, that it's just Gardner's who's taken the forefront for Egyptologists, that they have other signs, but still, we got missing signs. They don't know the learning of the Egyptians and the language of the Egyptians. Because if they did, they'd know every single sign and that it needs to be translated. Yes, facsimile number 1 and number 3 have hieroglyphs that nobody has translated. Joseph Smith gives an explanation. He gives a translation in Abraham chapter 1 for facsimile number 1. He does not give a translation, just an explanation for facsimile number 3. He didn't get that far. He was setting it up for it. He didn't get that far. He only chose 3 facsimiles. And he chose those 3 and put them in that order. And he never got to the translation for facsimile number 3. So as far as the world knew, the Egyptian papyri was a failure. That Joseph Smith is a false translator. And you need to know his ability to translate had been under attack previous to this. 1900, a Bishop Spalding of the Baptists here in Utah published a book, Joseph Smith as Translator, in which the guy is assuming he knows Egyptian from what has been published, going through the Egyptian stuff, realizing that the Book of Abraham just doesn't work. And he likely also covered the King Follett sermon. Somehow he had obtained that document, knew of it, and knew that Joseph Smith had said that the biblical Hebrew text was wrong, and that Elohim must be translated in the plural all the way through the Bible. Because R.C. Webb, which was his nom de plume, he specifically hired himself out as a defender of lost causes. And Heber J. Grant paid to publish his response to Bishop Spalding. And there's some fun stuff in there, but yet he doesn't know either and is wrong on many of occasions. It's important to be an actual translator in order to talk about a subject regarding translation. You can't just think that you can study it on your own and now you're an expert. You need to know the scientific process for decipherment that Jean Champollion used. But understand that it's not Egyptian. It's the learning of the Greeks, language of the Egyptians. And so, thus, the reason why we call the names most popularly in society under the Greek naming: Osiris, Set, Horus, Isis. That comes from the Greek. It's like using the word Jesus rather than Joshua, because we're using the Greek. There's Greek, and then there's Hebrew, and there's Egyptian, and there's Assyrian, etc. There is a difference in the languages. And so in section 107, verses 91 and 92, Joseph Smith informs the newly formed Quorum of 12 and their 70, who are missionaries at that time. Elders of the church who went out as missionaries. And they were told their duty. And Joseph Smith told them Joseph Smith's duty as the president of the church, the head of the church, that as the head of the church, he has the keys of Moses. No other keys are the head of the church, only the keys of Moses. And the vision of Kirtland was where Joseph Smith got the keys of Moses. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because of the attacks on translation, claim that that's now literal history. Section 110 is now literal history. The first vision is now literal history. The second vision, literal history. The vision of John the Baptist, literal history. So critics now complain that, well, where is the actual appearance, scripture, of Peter, James, and John to Joseph Smith? He doesn't need it. You don't understand what he did. In 1 Nephi, chapter 1, verse 8, we are told that Lehi, being thus overcome with the Spirit, was carried away in a vision, even that he saw the heavens opened, and he thought he saw God sitting upon his throne, surrounded with numerous concourses of angels. If you read verse 7, you'd see that it was a dream. Cast himself upon his bed as a vision. If you had a program that allowed you to search the scriptures for keywords, vision and dream, you see the first one, Numbers chapter 12, verse 6. This is where Moses' brother and sister form a coup to overthrow Moses, because they think they can run the church better than Moses. So the Lord himself comes down to the tabernacle and says to them, "Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream." Job chapter 7, there's 18 of them, by the way. "Then thou scarest me with dreams, and terrifiest me through visions." There's a couple more from Job. Isaiah 29, verse 7. The multitude of all nations that fight against Ariel. Is that mermaid? Even all that fight against her and her munition, and that distress her, shall be as a dream of a night vision. Can't be more clear than that. Dream and vision has to do with the same thing. And then there's Daniel, talking about dreams and visions in the bed. The thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head, I saw a dream which made me afraid. Tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen. 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 16. Just had to keep going. Now I, Nephi, do not make a full account of the things which my father had written, for he hath written many things which he saw in visions and in dreams. 1 Nephi 8:2. Behold, I have dreamed a dream, or in other words, I have seen a vision. Second Nephi 27, verse 3. All nations that fight against Zion and that distress her shall be as a dream of a night vision. Alma chapter 30, verse 28. Yea, they durst not make use of that which is in their own, lest they should offend their priests, who do yoke them to Jesus according to their desires, and have brought them to believe by their traditions of their dreams, of their whims, and their visions, and their pretended mysteries. That they should, if they did not do according to their words, offend some unknown being who they say is God. So Joseph Smith, his visions are not literal history. If you did your scripture studies, you would know this. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints lie to us, calling them literal history. The visions of Joseph Smith are not literal histories. They are a vision dream, because Joseph Smith is a seer. That is what a seer is. So you can do your scripture study on seer through the scriptures. You can learn about 1 Samuel, saying that before time a prophet was called a seer. You can read in the Book of Mormon about Amma to King Limhi. A prophet is greater than a seer. A prophet is a prophet, or a seer is a prophet and a revelator, and can translate. And so in section 107, verses 91 and 92, as the keys of Moses, only Joseph Smith is a seer, prophet, revelator, and translator. So, translator of Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. 1 Nephi. Learning of the Jews pre-Babylonian captivity. Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. It is not biblical Hebrew. Biblical Hebrew was created by Jewish Masoretes from 800 to 1000 CE. That's when they worked on it. And it took them that long because they created it. They turned the biblical Hebrew into Aramaic script. They added letters that they now called vowels. They created little points and dashes to call them vowels, so that the scriptures can now be sung. It's still extinct as to how those markings in the original Masoretic text is to be pronounced for singing purposes. Nevertheless, Jewish rabbis still continue to do it according to what they claim is tradition. But Joseph Smith said that that process that they did was wrong. This church says Joseph is wrong. Louis Zucker, professor at the University of Utah, came to BYU, gave a talk to the BYU students who were told that Joseph Smith is wrong. Your founder is wrong, little kids at BYU. And then he went to give them the tradition, which Joseph said was wrong. I know how you feel, Joseph. I know how you feel. And so this church does not believe that Joseph is a seer, prophet, revelator, and translator because of the wisdom of the world that said Joseph Smith is wrong. So they even leave out translator. Do you not listen to conference? I do the videos every conference, before it happens, during it. Did you catch it? Watch for conference when they do the sustaining vote. Sustaining vote is section 107, verse 22. Oops. That's not being done, is it? Nevertheless, I warn you, I do the videos over and over every conference. They leave out translator. You can't leave it out. Especially when Nelson gets up and claims he's making a translation. Do you know how to check him on it? Is he true or false? You have to run the test on Nelson. The Bible says so. It's plagiarized in the Book of Mormon. So therefore it must be true. Is Nelson correct with his translations? Israel, let God prevail. Is he correct or is he false? Do you know how to make the translation? Do you just trust him and say he's true and ignore the experts in the field who say, oh my God, he is nowhere near true. He just made it up. In claiming Joseph Smith is false, they expose themselves conference after conference after conference as the actual people who are false. Claiming of all 15 who now, under Brigham Young, have become prophets, seers, revelators, with the president of the church only having the keys of Peter, James, and John, not Moses. But they just let us believe that the president of the church has those keys too. They generally say, we have all the keys, obey us. But they don't claim the keys of Moses for the president. They claim the president keys of Peter, James, and John. That's why Nelson did the photo op with the keys of Peter at the Vatican Temple. You don't see how you've been conned, Mormons. The church stopped the Scripture Mastery program after September 6th. They didn't want Mormons to study their scriptures anymore. The footnoting project proved to be a failure, despite their efforts to divert you away from the actual scripture footnotes that should have been made, trying to get you to believe whatever footnotes they put in. It still ended up as a failure. And yet, in the early 2000s, they redid the footnotes for the foreign editions. They didn't really want the footnotes changed. They just wanted the Bible Dictionary Topical Guide replaced with Guide to the Scriptures. Except that those of us, which were upwards of 200 at the beginning, working on them, learned that there is an emergency need to fix the footnotes. So they allowed it, and then they readjusted the way it was done by creating two main committees of 4 individuals to go through every single reworked page for verification and final approval. How do I know these things? How do I know? So Joseph Smith is a seer because he has visions. The visions, i.e. dreams, are both prophetic in nature, that he is seeing the future, because it's not literal history, and revelatory, that it is giving a day, an hour, a time, a date. The Book of Mormon itself explains this definition of revelation for us. Mormon, chapter 8, verse 33, talking about the Book of Mormon that is finishing up. Look ye unto the revelations of God, for behold, the time cometh. Prophecy, predicting of the future, and the time in the future of the prophecies to be fulfilled at that day, when all these things, prophecies and times, revelations, must be fulfilled. Book of Mormon corrects the interpretation of Revelation for you. And so, if you knew through your study, Revelation chapter 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet. Astronomy is how we have a calendar. Astronomy is how we have a watch, because it gives us dates, times, days and hours. This is astronomy. Don't call it astrology. You're wrong. This is a calendar date of the future, because this is a Jewish author who wrote this. He is not talking about the birth of Jesus during the Roman period time, as Catholics claim, and thus Christians. In 2017, everybody online around the whole world learned that this was a date and knew the date, and were more popular than I was, even though I did get 40,000 views. I knew the date. I would eventually find out after Monsantide that, oops, I was supposed to put verse 5 with it. Because then I go, oh crap, it's right there in Joseph Smith translation, Revelation 12, 1-17. Parentheses, appendix, period, note, the change sequence of the verses in the JST, period, and parentheses. And so the original picture I was using had to be upgraded with my new picture that I've been showing you ever since. But Joseph Smith also tells us some other fun stuff. In verse 1 he adds, "And there appeared a great sign in heaven, in the likeness of things on the earth." This is prophecy and revelation. Revelation, a sign in heaven, a day and time. In the likeness of things on the earth is the prophecy, prediction of the future. Prophecy and revelation. Joseph Smith demonstrates he's a prophet and a revelator, with that one correction, addition. He then goes on to help you understand how to interpret the prophecies and revelations of the Jews in verse 7. The woman, which is Virgo, is the church. Not the Christian church. Mormon church. And thus, the man-child is our Christ, who is born from the church. That means the Mormon Christ is a Mormon, born in the church. Thus it can't be Joseph. But remember that key of Moses? That's the Jewish Christ. A man like Moses, who is to come in the future, is the Jewish Christ. A man like Moses. Deuteronomy 18, verse 15 through 19. A prophet will come in the future. That's a prophecy about a prophet who will be like Moses. So section 107, verses 91 and 92, is about the head of the church being the Mormon Christ. It can't be Jesus, can it? So, then you have translator. All of these you can now test, according to the Bible test, to see if Joseph Smith is correct or not. Is he true or not, or is he false? You shall know them by their fruits. And I've been doing all these 8.6K videos for these whole latter days that are now over with, showing you that Joseph Smith is the man like Moses, the seer, the prophet, the revelator, the translator. Because Revelation chapter 12, there it is in Lehi's dream, vision, the date for the prediction of the future. And if you honestly don't know what that date is, all you had to do was go to my #1 video, because the church knew that I knew. And that's why I'm being cyber terrorized all these years. Why they want you dead and want me silenced and dead, but they failed. So that you don't know, so that you will die. Because Joseph Smith is correct. Because that was what I pursued in my study and research. I had to decipher Paleo-Hebrew, because nobody else did it right. William Foxwell Albright is wrong, horribly wrong. And then I came to learn that it was Sir Alan Gardner who told him to screw it up, to bias the whole thing with the conclusion in mind. It's called the acronym theory. Just use the acronym theory. He doesn't even use it correctly, because it's supposed to be a picture for every letter that would correspond to the Proto-Sinaitic, and yet the Babylonian Semitic Hebrew, the word doesn't always start with the letter of the alphabet for which it's supposed to correspond with. Real simple test to make, and nobody did it. Everybody just assumed William Foxwell Albright was right and carry on his traditions as if they were true. Nobody bothered to test them. Like the Bible Code guy who said he saved the president of Israel with his Bible Code. People ran the test. Oops. Yeah, we can do it with Moby Dick too. People don't get it. People are not experts with Joseph Smith, but they are with other sources. Scientists have been telling Christians the Bible is not literal history because it's Jewish. It's prophecy in Revelation 2. And as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints denies Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon as Jewish prophecy in Revelation, so too do Christians deny the Jewish authors as prophets and revelators. And so I learned that Joseph Smith is correct in the King Follett sermon, is that the head God is Yah, and he appointed his son Yah with the creation of heaven and earth. And then, having completed it, in Genesis chapter 2 verse 4 is given his new name, Yahweh. which you know as Jehovah, because of the European corruption of the phonemes. Even though Yahweh is incorrect too, that's Babylonian Semitic Hebrew. Not Paleo-Hebrew, which is closer to Greek. Thus, Yah is Zeus, pictorially the same. And so, translation of the facsimiles, yeah, spot on, with a couple of errors. Just the waiter and the prince need to be switched. But yes, it is a female pharaoh standing behind the throne of Osiris, whom Joseph Smith refers to as Abraham. Because that's exactly what the Jews did in creating their prophecies and revelations from the Egyptian documents. The same exact process. They named Osiris Abraham, because the stories of Abraham can be found in the Egyptian documents about Osiris, just as Joseph Smith took facsimile number 3, facsimile number 1 of Osiris and said it's Abraham. He knew what he was doing. He is correct. He is doing it after the learning of the Jews as prophecy and revelation, not literal history. So the 3 facsimiles are the 3 solar eclipses over the United States of America for the full latter days. Facsimile number 1 on the lion couch, 21st August 2017. Facsimile number 2 has the ring of fire for an annular eclipse, 14th of October 2023 over Utah. And the wedding supper feast from Revelation 19, 8 April 2024. Joseph knew the dates of the latter days. So that passage of scripture, I think it's 130 or 131, I think 130, that critics of Joseph Smith say Joseph Smith is false. He gave a date for the second coming and it was wrong. Oops. Section 130, yeah. Joseph, my son, if thou livest until thou art 85 years old, thou shalt see the face of the Son of Man. Thought he did in the first vision. This is a forged document. It may include some of his actual stuff mingled with forged document stuff. But no, this was a Danite who put that in, claiming that Joseph said it. Just like Mark Hoffman, who created the forged document of the Salamander letter, claiming it was by Martin Harris. We have forged documents by Brigham Young, claiming to be by Joseph Smith. Section 115, Section 116, Section 117, Section 118, Section 119, Section 132, Section 130. We have a lot of them. Forged documents claiming to be by Joseph Smith that are not Joseph Smith's. And people believe it. And therefore believe that Joseph Smith is false. Because of the forged documents. You got conned. And so you don't understand that Joseph Smith had nothing to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon. Not by the gift and power of God either. It is prophecy and revelation by Sidney Rigdon, with the revised 116 pages by Joseph Smith Sr. That's why there's Jewish Kabbalah in it, and Yorkites Knights Templar in it. Egyptian gold plates from the second vision, which is the exact same parallel, by the way, to Lehi's second vision, with that date from Revelation. The latter days, 23rd September 2017, a month after the first day of darkness that all Jews knew and told about. The word sign, if you've ever heard me say it, in Paleo-Hebrew, it's the letter A turned on its side, and then the last letter is an X. Crossroads. The 3 solar eclipses over the United States of America forms the first and last letter of the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. So when Isaiah says, I give unto you a sign, and then says, Virgo shall conceive Jupiter and bear a son, Jupiter, that's the sign in the heavens. The likeness of the things on earth is the coming of the Christ, the Jewish Christ, on that date. And it was known to the Egyptians, because it's from the Egyptian documents, where they all got it from. And I've gone over that with you. Joseph Smith is our founding Christ, Messiah ben Joseph, to prepare the way for the Mormon, who would be likewise having the keys of Moses and demonstrating them on that very year in 2020, and then again for 2025, because Oaks got leaked by little sister Jessica, saying that 2020 was going to be their test run for the coming of second coming Jesus. Oaks got exposed as the enemy by little sister Jessica, who still doesn't know and understand it. Neither do the Mormons, who did the YouTube videos that the Mormon YouTube employee thought he was going to show me up and recommend it for me. Oops. He is in denial of who I am. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints knows exactly who I am. But they cannot allow me to be known to the world, let alone the Mormons. All you had to do was judge me by my fruit, just like Joseph. You gotta know the field in order to judge him correctly. Not with your Christian interpretation. Because in case you hadn't caught on in the video, I just exposed to you that I am the man like Moses, the seer, the prophet, the revelator, the translator of Paleo-Hebrew and Egyptian. Now you understand why there is so much hatred and evil towards me to shut me up. As yesterday morning I had a dream, and I told you the dream, and then later I had to give you the sign in the heavens for that dream. I have proven myself numerous times for Mormons, and yet Mormons are about to die because of their unbelief in me to save their lives.